Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to the Weather Center. Very different format here, but I figured for the digital era, I'll go ahead and rock on with a YouTube update as well for all this wintry weather and severe weather we have coming our way. This is the latest look at the GFS. You can see as we go through the day today, our big winter storm is expected to start to take shape from the Colorado Front Range, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. You can already see three distinct transitions here. There's your rain, your sleet, freezing rain mist, and then all that wraparound snowfall and the frigid temperatures that are surging south out of the Dakotas, out of Canada, and further off towards the south. As we fast forward the clock here, go through tonight and into the first half of Sunday, as the system continues to, you could almost say, rapidly intensify as it moves out across the plains into the Midwest, we have a couple different things that are going to be going on here. Your freezing rain, icing threat is going to be lethal. You want to watch this very closely. We have a very robust amount of warm air coming in out of the Caribbean and out of the anomalously warm Gulf of Mexico that'll be feeding this rain, snow, sleet line that you can see right in through here, the lower Midwestern states, before we quickly transition into heavy snowfall to the north of your low pressure system is where you're going to find your snowfall in every single case, especially with these very strong and dynamic winter storms. So if you see where the center of circulation is, right in through here between Tennessee, Kentucky, southern base of Illinois, Missouri, you can kind of argue northeastern Arkansas. If you take where that is, track it east, and draw a line to the north, that's where your snowfall is going to be. And if you have any additional questions, happy to help you out in the comments section. To the south, where you see all that strong rain, heavy rainfall and thunderstorms that move into Florida, the mid-Atlantic, and Georgia, that is where your level 3 out of 5 risk already exists for the southeast and especially the deep south and Dixie Alley. Now, here's a look at your weather headlines. We have a huge conglomerate of all sorts of winter weather watches, warnings, and advisories that start for the Front Range of the Rockies, the Dakotas, Nebraska, especially Kansas. I think Kansas is going to be ground zero with the development of that low pressure before it rockets off like a jet towards the east and northeast. Everybody in its path is going to feel those winter weather effects. And don't be surprised, down here, if we get some of those tornado watches and severe thunderstorm watches in effect over the next 12 or so hours. Be prepared for that. Now, I want to start with the freezing rain first. I think regardless, we're going to see power outages. We're going to see blockage on the roadways. You don't want to be traveling in this, and we're going to see some potential damage from this freezing rain event. I'll go ahead and rewind it so you all can track it through with me again. You can see it starts in Kansas, central Kansas, southern Nebraska could get it before it tracks through Missouri, the southern halves of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, the bottom 1/4 of Ohio. Lots of accumulation potentially for Kentucky. You can see around Lexington and in that general area, a couple of inches, honestly, of potential freezing rain and ice accumulation before this continues off through West Virginia. You could get a little bit of that sleet icing mix into the very most southwest corner of Pennsylvania. Not going to say too much. It's probably going to stay more down through West Virginia and Virginia before it moves all the way through to Washington, Frederick, Atlantic City, and Salisbury out there right along the easternmost coastline of the United States. Now, the latest from our in-house model looking at the snowfall. This has ticked just a little bit further to the north. Again, it's been kind of doing that. I had a few folks over on other social media platforms mention that I'm dead wrong about this. In fact, you can fact check me. A lot of the hot topics and trending posts you saw on social media had this starting in the south between January 3rd and January 6th. Today's the 4th. Notice how far to the north we've trended, and I think we are locked in at this point, especially, again, with the progression of that low. Heaviest accumulations in Nebraska, Kansas, southern border of Iowa, Missouri, getting through the Midwestern states, the heart of the Midwestern states and the lower Great Lakes. Also have a lot of lake effect for the Michigan Peninsula, Pennsylvania, and New York State, with a little bit of an extension of that up into the northeast, getting as far north as Maine even, some of that lake effect and wraparound snowfall from this deep, occluded low pressure that's going to rocket off the coast. Switch over to the GFS. Same song and dance, getting started later in the day today with our heaviest accumulations, Nebraska and Kansas, and then you can track this low all the way through. You can just follow the low pressure, and again, to the north and on the northwest quadrant of that circulation is where all your heavy snowfall is going to be. Switch over to the European model here in a second, and you can see Euro has kept this just a little bit further to the south, a little bit. maybe a couple of miles. You can see Nebraska, not as heavy accumulation, a lot more of a focus on the eastern and northeastern corner of Kansas, less for parts of Missouri and Illinois before it ticks back up as we start to get a little bit of the force feeding from probably the Atlantic coast over the Appalachians, and then it tracks through off the coastline. Still similar effect for Michigan, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast with that lake effect concern. Here's that wild card down there in the south. This is what the GFS is picking up on, and I also have the freezing rain / icing mixed in on this overlay as well, so you can see the differentiating between the models and so on. The heavy snow band is likely to occur per the GFS through Texas, parts of Oklahoma, and Arkansas. But notice even now, we're starting to arc back up towards the north ever so slightly more. We miss almost the entirety of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and we begin to mix in that icing risk, that wintry precip mix threat for these areas. And that's what I do think personally, in my best opinion, this is probably what's going to stick. We're not going to see as much snowfall, but we will inevitably see that freezing rain, that icing, and that sleet risk for our Gulf Coast neighbors, and nothing down in Florida. I don't know why there's still people saying snow flurries for Tampa and Orlando. You can see well to the north, not likely to occur. Same thing with one of our more latest iterations of the GFS. You can see it has backed off even more so on some of the snowfall for the Gulf Coast, the southeast, but that sleet and freezing rain risk remains an issue as we get a little bit more of that warmth to start to circulate around the front edge of that next low pressure that could start as far southwest as northern Mexico, Baja California, getting into where my old stomping grounds used to be in Tucson, Arizona, rocking through New Mexico, Albuquerque, and surrounding areas could get some heavy snowfall from that second system. And again, maybe to your disappointment, but not too much happening down here in the southeast. This is why I don't like to air out winter weather forecasts when they're 200-300 hours out. We didn't do that here at News 6 during the hurricane season. We're not going to start for the views or the clicks as we get into the wintertime. Now, we're going to switch gears very quickly. I know, hold on to your butts is one of my favorite sentences. This is our future radar from the Barron model talking severe weather. Look at the squall line that extends from the base of our Midwestern states through Tennessee all the way down to the Gulf coastline. From about Nashville and Memphis is where your severe weather risk is likely to begin. These white arrows show that warm conveyor belt of tropical moisture and heat from the Caribbean, believe it or not, and the Gulf of Mexico. So all this area is going to be very volatile, ready to rock and roll for that severe weather. Garden variety mix, straight line winds, tornadoes, maybe some large hail embedded in there as well, with some of this bleeding over into the southeast, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas. Level 1 risk, even in fact, for the northern half, the northern 1/3, I'll say, of Florida, once again, just as we saw about a week or so ago. Here's a zoomed in perspective of your severe risk for tomorrow, level 3 for parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana before we kind of expand upon that threshold with the level 2 and level 1. Again, just kind of follow that frontal line on satellite, on radar. Stay tuned with your local weather offices, your local weather broadcasts, and they'll keep you ahead of the storm as we go throughout the day. Here's an expanded upon view of that level 3, 2, and 1 risk. You can superimpose this into the southeast, albeit a little lesser for now. They may elevate it depending on how our dynamics look once that system gets going, as well as what it looks like after getting out of Dixie Alley, the deep south, into our neighborhood here in the southeast. So if any questions, comments, or concerns, drop me a comment in the comment section down below. Please like this video, share it, spread the word. We got to get the word out because this is going to be a very active pattern, not only with this first winter storm, but the several to come.